Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Bench, where we discuss taking hardware through production and the stories along the way. My name is Bill Brock, CEO of Peridio, the ecosystem for building and maintaining advanced embedded products. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Bench. We have a fantastic show for you here today. Kim Losey with Rapid Robotics. We've met previously on another show over the air, and we're really excited to have you, Kim, on Beyond the Bench today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Great to see you again.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into it, I know you have a lot of exciting updates to share. Just for those that don't know much about you or about Rapid, if we could just do like the quick elevator pitch and we'll get into it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I like to tell people I am the CEO of Rapid Robotics, but I'm really a business designer. I've been creating products, businesses, my whole career. I have been the CEO at Rapid for the last 12 months, I guess a year now. And Rapid started in 2019 with the mission of trying to solve a labor crisis and really get to a world without labor shortages. Like many startups in the robotic space, we've gone through a number of uh, pivots, I suppose you could say. And here we're in the latest chapter that we sometimes refer to as Rapid 3.0. So excited to tell you more about that.
Awesome. And what is Rapid's like? What is the specific use case that you guys are solving?
We're really focused on picking and packing sort of high speed performance operations in logistics and end of line manufacturing.
Very cool. Yeah, very interesting space. And yeah, I know a few solutions here, but I'm really excited to get in what you guys are up to. So last time we talked, I don't think the 3 Pro 3.0 was on the list. So what's going on here?
Yeah. So I think when we spoke last, we were in the Rapid 2.0 era.
I think you've been PEO for about 4 months. And
Yeah, I think you're yeah, yeah. But at that point, we had been developing, what we called Rapid ID, actually. It was the using generative AI, 3D vision to be able to give robots the ability to handle more variability at the end of a line. Very much focused on picking, packing, palletizing. We were seeing so many use cases in third-party logistics and manufacturing where there were just hordes of humans at the end of the line that were, doing these very mundane jobs, putting stuff into boxes, generally, in not always the best conditions. It was going really well. We raised some additional money from our current investors. We had customers, very large customers, with a lot of that needed a lot of robots, and the sales cycle was just taking there were 2 things. The sales cycle was taking a really long time. So I started calling every other CEO or chief revenue officer in the space that I knew, and I was like, this can't be normal. How does a sales cycle take this long?" And unfortunately, it seems that in some cases, that is just the way it happens. There are a number of hurdles.
CEO to CEO here, like what was the sales cycle you were dealing with? Is it like 18 to 24 months or like, yeah, that was it. That's brutal.
It's brutal, and I just it was like for a year, we'd been talking to these customers, and they're like, "No, we're gonna buy," and so I called them, and I was like, "Look, you gotta be straight with me. What is going on here? It can't be the right solution." They're like, "No, no, it's fine. We're gonna buy it." I was like, I'm not buying it. I'll be back to you with another plan." And so then I called, a bunch of other CEOs. They're like, "Yeah, I mean, 18 to 24 months isn't that uncommon." And I was like, "Shit, this is not a venture-backed business. If we can't solve this, we have to do something different." So that was kind of piece one. And then we were visiting a very large beverage manufacturer and walking through their facility, traditional brownfield kind of facility. They're in the midst of a digital transformation, not really able to deconstruct a bunch of conveyance and other things that are going throughout their building. And we're like, it's not going to fit. You can't fit a work cell in this space. And so my business partner and our CTO, Tom Hummel, and I left there. We went to the airport. We're literally sitting at the airport lounge waiting to get on a flight. And we're like, that napkin sketch moment, if it just looked like this, it could just slide up to the line. And we were like, could we do that? So, 3 or 4 days later, we got the entire team together and we were like, okay, I think we have to do this. What would have to be true for this to be possible? And so from there, we just started accelerating things, and we built what we are now calling the Rapid 3 Pro. I like to think about it like an industrial humanoid. Kind of a I am personally a little bit excited about the humanoid space, but I feel like in industry, it's really far away from being as high speed, high performance, and high reliability as industrial customers need. And so we thought, you know what? If it doesn't need legs, factories were actually built for machines, not for humans. Don't put legs on it. Give it a static, repositionable base that can be moved with, with a simple pallet jack, and then you can put all of the energy, the compute, all of that on it into making it move really fast because humans move really fast. If you're going to complement the work that humans are doing, you need a machine that can keep up. And so that was really the idea behind it. And the scary part, as a at the time relatively new CEO, I had to go to our board and say, "Hey, well, the great news is I know what the market needs. The bad news is it doesn't exist yet." So, but, I mean, I think the thing that gave us confidence in this is we then took that concept back to a couple of the big customers we'd been working with, and in 10 days started getting signed purchase orders. I think there were a couple of things that contributed to that. Of course, we've been having these ongoing conversations. It didn't just like come out of the blue, but
But it was the nudge. It was the nudge that they
it
needed.
was
When you're
the
struggling, looking at a 18-month sales cycle, and it's like, how do we dethaw this thing? How do we accelerate? Yeah, it's a big
and
signal.
Yeah, and I think that it really wasn't so much about performance because I think the solution that we had before was more high perform it was arguably better than anything else that was on the market. But I think anytime you introduce more risk to a customer, that's what really slows the sales cycle down. And that was kind of, we were talking about the LinkedIn post I think I wrote a couple weeks ago. It really that was the aha moment for us where it was like, you know what? If you're going to put a work cell in somebody's environment, there is no way that that's not disruptive, right? It's different than what they're usually doing. It requires they remove people. Sometimes they remove additional equipment, and then they have to put in air and the right power and all of these things to put the work cell in there. Whereas if it had the footprint of a human, you can just kind of roll it up to the line.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that simple, but straightforward, we'll call it.
Well, and from what, you shared earlier, and I know from the previous conversations we had, I mean, you're automating already incredibly challenging, literally back-breaking work in extreme hot conditions and situations where people are not genuinely excited to, you know, it's not a thriving environment for people. So, yeah, it seems like this is a great solution, great form factor. And for those listening, it's literally it looks like a humanoid from the waist up, like suction cups for hands, essentially, and like some cameras in the face, and then a box on the bottom half, right?
Yeah. Now, the cool thing I think about that box is there are two components to it. One, we've built it with onboard air. So we've built this super capacitor that allows it to function at very high performance, but you can plug it into a 120-volt outlet. Now, my hypothesis there is, if I could bring you this robot in the way that I could deliver you a software 2-week trial or something comparable, it might be much easier for you to be able to say, "Oh, I see it. It's doing what I need it to do." It doesn't have to be on your line or in everybody's way, although it could be. And you can try it. You can see it live for yourself. But if that were to require, complex setup from your facilities team or whatever, it becomes much harder. So we've really tried to think about building this thing not only for performance, but for eliminating those go-to-market hurdles, that delay that sales cycle. And I think nobody wants the sales cycle to be delayed. The people we're working with are, they're dying because they don't have enough labor to be able to do the tasks that they need to do.
Well, let's segue really quick into sales cycle and business model. My notes say that you're doing a robotics as a service. Is that like a truck? Like people are typically leasing these, or how does that work?
Yes, so it depends. What we found is it depends on the customer, and there's a split view, I think, across the industry on this. But I think In some cases, third-party logistics, for example, it's been my experience that they tend to, they're operators, they don't really want to own equipment. And so they like the robotics as a service model. We can be there as an extension of their team. They don't have to own the equipment. We manage it, we deploy it, we take care of it. Um, and we basically finance the whole thing. And then there are some customers like, automotive customers and others who are very comfortable. They've been buying equipment forever. They want to own the robots. And so we started saying, okay, fine. If you want to own the robots, it's not a problem. We can continue to support with an annual subscription for software service support. So we're still an extension of your team, but you have the ability to write off, the depreciate, I guess, the hardware. And so, it's hard to say really where this is going to land. It's a new robot, so everybody's happy right now with the robotics as a service model. We'll see in another 12 months, where that actually lands. But I think in some ways providing customers whatever flexibility they need is okay with us. I don't want to, this whole process, there's enough hurdles. If your company and finance team is comfortable with one model, I'd rather just go with the flow.
Yeah, yeah. While you're, early with this new product, especially. Yeah. Um, what are the sectors that you guys are getting the most traction? They're very, very different use cases between like CPG and 3PL and automotive. And
I know.
like, where are you excited to go?
So right now in 3PLs, our first customer is a large 3PL. We're actually deploying this Monday. Um, there's a bit of a crazy startup story here. We're packing it in a truck, driving it down to the facility on Sunday. It's a little,
Is this
it'll be
you mentioned Atlanta? Is this another? I'm originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee. There's like
oh,
a huge
okay.
3PL hub there. I'm in Nashville. We've got good friends at Western Express. So is this more southern stuff or?
This is actually going to Las Vegas, and the reason being Las Vegas is close to San Francisco.
Yeah, you got it.
And then I keep joking with my team, if everything goes wrong, we'll just, bet on black and see what happens. Not the best idea really, but we'll see, we'll see. Yeah, we're deploying, to this 3PL customer, and then we have some food and beverage customers,
Okay.
and consumer packaged goods. So it's, but those use cases are way, further down the line. So again,
Mhm.
putting things into boxes, very similar to kind of the 3PL packing use cases.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it feels like, from what I know about automotive, I'm sure there are some applications, but the last like they're not putting cars in boxes. Maybe like working with the suppliers in the automotive space could work well,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, we are, I think, really good at handling variability, but automotive goes from thousands of different parts to tens or hundreds of thousands of different parts.
yeah, and they have just different requirements. And I brought this up on the show, I'm sure a few times, but we used to, as I said, live in Chattanooga. Volkswagen had a major factory there, and just the uptime and how they run those plants and the maintenance windows. If you're in automotive, you're in automotive. It's just a different business entirely. It's very intense.
It is. And I think that there are, a lot of those jobs that have not been automated in automotive. You look at what those people are doing, and they're actually doing 10 different jobs. And so that's where the promise of like a full blown humanoid actually becomes exciting. I think it's not quite there yet, but I think it'll probably get there. And then but then you look at third party logistics and you look at the end of the line, and that's where units per hour is the metric that matters, right? Customers, time is money. You have to get a certain number of products out the door. You're paid by your customers to get those products out the door. And when you've got a robot that works at a fraction of the speed of a human, there's, ROI zero, never. And so we really focused on uh, performance. The components that we're using are high speed industrial components. We've simplified the robot so it's like the arm itself doesn't have. I think the whole bill of materials has like under 50 line items. I mean, there are not very many things that it is very simple. But we did that so that we can keep the cost low for the customers. We can keep it simple for maintenance, and so that it becomes very high performance.
So when we talked first, you were moving into the generative space and leveraging generative technologies. It sounded like you were getting a lot of value and traction. I'm sure that doing that was much more expensive at the time than it is nearly a year later. But how is that playing out for you, and what benefits are you gaining right now from using generative solutions?
Yeah, well, I think it was really, without generative and without computer vision, the advances that have really happened there, I'm not sure we would have even made it from Rapid 1.0 to Rapid 2.0, and then certainly wouldn't be in this phase of Rapid 3.0. I think it allows us to handle the kind of variability that these customers have. Like when you're picking, if you have an operation where you're picking and packing or you're packing the exact same item every day, all day for years in a row, robots might not make sense. Then you just buy a machine. You build a machine that's built for that. But so many customers, especially in the 3PL space, the things are different all the time. The dexterity required to do some of those things is very different. And so that's where, robotics makes sense. So that's what it's allowed us to do. It allows us to, you know, I think 2 things. It allows us to figure out what are we seeing? What is the robot seeing? And how do we pack that thing, pick that thing and pack that thing? But it also allows us to, or will allow us to, better deploy robots quickly. So the robot understands, where is it? What is it looking at? Where is the pallet? Where is the conveyor? And so there's like the days of programming waypoints. It's pretty, it's gone. And I think that that's where a lot of foundation model companies, a lot of these AI companies are really getting it right and making that even easier. Now, when we started Rapid, a year ago, I guess a year ago when we made the second pivot, we were very focused on generative AI, 3D vision, and that we built an ensemble, or we took an ensemble approach so that we would be able to use all kinds of different models depending on the situation so that the robot can adapt accordingly, and we as a company can stay ahead and always take advantage of the latest releases, latest models, and not be stuck, um, in sort of an old framework. So that's been valuable too. I think there's just been so much happening, in the space that we feel pretty well equipped to be able to, take advantage of that.
Going back a little bit to your earlier comment on the pivot and the board and uh, your background, you are not an engineer and you're running a effectively a deep tech company. You're like maybe deep mind somewhere deep, like hard as hell engineering problem. We'll call it that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how has that been for you? Like how like I think when we first talked, just getting up and rolling as CEO, and it was I very much enjoyed that conversation. I bet you were a little like you're probably drinking from the fire hose. Then you got a year in belt now. How has this transition been for a marketer?
Well, it's been great, I think. I think that the interesting thing is, so when I was, I don't know, however old, I guess I was 16, and figuring out what do I wanna do, when I grow up. I think, that was the early '90s. There weren't you could either be the creative girl or the science girl. There was no overlap, right? So I think that I've always had this pretty technical background and capability, but just never really any formal training around it, and so maybe that's good and maybe it's bad.
Well, you also
I
and
think that
spent a lot of time at deeply technical companies, right? You did half a dozen years at Autodesk, something like that.
Yeah, and I think I've had it's been one of the greatest experiences, I think, of my life to be able to actually work with really deeply technical people that are, all the way from people designing and machining jet engines for companies like Pratt& and Whitney and Rolls-Royce, like, really advanced engineering, and then, more and more in the additive space, in the manufacturing space, and so I've learned a lot from them, and I think that's where I've been able to bring this sort of business designer background and marketing background and marry the deep tech side of things. I can understand enough of it to, I think, ask the right questions and make key decisions, but I'm not so buried in the reality sometimes of things that it's easy for me to say, "Well, what if it why couldn't it be like this?" And then they can, sometimes the team will laugh at me, and then other times they're like, "Oh, you're right, we probably could solve it with that." So those are some of the greatest moments when I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I do know what I'm doing."
So, crazy curveball here, and maybe you're well equipped for this as a marketer. But so much of your role and as CEO is selling and storytelling. How has that been assuming this role and like learning the story, learning the market, and embracing something that you didn't start out building yourself?
Right. So, well, it's been easy in some ways because I was a big part even before I was CEO of really building that story and shaping the company. Jordan Kretschmer was our founder, CEO. Um, we had a we still have a great working relationship. And so he really brought me on early into like, how do we shape this story? What are we trying to do? Why does it matter? And so I'm grateful for that. So that made it easy. Where it was hard is, I think uh, I've had to work really hard at being more brave. I think that I don't know, I was thinking about this the other day about how being a CEO really requires confidence and conviction. And you don't always have confidence, but you have to figure it out. And you have to really believe, or at least for me, my process. I can't do something risky unless I really believe in it. But then once I believe in it, it's like there's no stopping me. And so it's been hard, but it's been hard to kind of find that. Um, I guess I've always had the grit, but not always had the brave. I don't know what the right word is, but the brave. I haven't always been as brave to be able to put myself out there and say, "Look, this is what I believe. This is why it has to be this way," especially in a deeply technical field. Not as an engineer, it's a little intimidating, but what I always fall back to is what do I know about customers? Because that's something I'm really good at. I'm really good at knowing what the customer needs, listening to the customer, and figuring out how do I translate the why into the what and connecting the engineering team with the market opportunity.
That's very cool. I appreciate the comments on bravery and I mean you have to be authentic and you have to be bought in on the vision that you're selling, right? And you wouldn't be a fit for this role if you didn't believe in the big picture, and I'm sure there was some ramp up, but it's exciting to hear that you especially with this latest pivot and which is I mean, like, a 24-month sales cycle is not a venture-backed business. It is tough, it's
Not
brutal, it's frustrating, and, I'm glad to hear that you found the unlock and you're starting to see what can we do to move quickly, what can we do to scale, what can we do to grow.
Yeah, and I think there are robotics companies that have certainly um, shortened that sales cycle. I think, there's large equipment manufacturers that have told me, look, it could be as short as a week, for something as simple as a case erector. But, that's more uncommon. I think there are definitely more situations that I've talked to other CEOs that have said, we have a sales order here and it requires 20 signatures. We've been on signature number 19 for 20 months. And you're just like, I mean, that was not our experience, but I've heard that from other people. And you just like that is it's so frustrating, and I think that's where it also goes back to one of the other things I am really good at is solving problems and just sort of asking, "It can't be this hard," and our the customers aren't gonna see success either if there's so much risk and disruption, so how do we eliminate that? And then how do we actually bring that of course, it's important to me to bring that to Rapid, to see Rapid succeed, but it's important to me to bring that to the entire industry because I think there's just so much opportunity. We see more and more companies, in the last 3 months too, committing to reshoring and, building entire new factories, and I just keep thinking, "Geez, I mean, we've as an industry, we owe it to, to make this place better and to make work better for people and profits better for companies. We have to find a way to streamline this whole process for them so it doesn't require 20 signatures and 12 months and then. So that's what I've been doing to everyone who will listen, sort of asking everybody to think about, what can you do with your process today to make it easier for customers to be able to say yes because they want to say yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Talking a lot about uncertainty, a lot about um, reshoring. What impacts are you seeing with your customers with all of the ambiguity that we're collectively wandering through right now? How is that impacting Rapid and how is that impacting your customers?
It's a great question. I don't know that there's a clear answer to that yet. It feels a bit chaotic, and I'm good at dealing with chaos, but this is even a bit much for me. I think it's, I think our customers are optimistic.
Mm,
I think that, in many cases, they are making commitments. I think they've been thinking about reshoring and thinking about, of course, the kind of disruption. They're prepared for disruption in many ways. And so I think though that this latest tariff,
this tariff or threat of tariff or real.
right, yeah, the uncertainty of all of it. I think we're still in that phase of people are just kind of holding on to their money maybe and saying like, big companies are making big commitments to, bringing back, building whole new factories, which is awesome. There are other customers though that are a little, I think, like, "Oh my gosh, what we don't know what to do. We need to wait and see what's gonna happen," which is concerning. I don't want this, the wait and see what's gonna happen is not always terrific.
Yeah, I saw this week Apple's now committing to India. Is that right? And
Yeah, I think, India and Vietnam, I think, or a couple other different products, so that's interesting. When you really understand how things move through the supply chain and how many times things come back across different borders, where these things are sourced from, that's the concerning part is I think we may be in a situation of shortages that nobody anticipated or wanted. Uh Certainly, the car market is crazy right now, I think even as a consumer. I've got a car that's, like, about to my husband came to pick me up at the airport the other day, and it literally died in the, like, no parking zone. So I'm jumping out, telling the security people, like, "I can't move, I can't move, give me an hour." And so, we're then thinking, "Okay, we've gotta buy a new car. Do we want a new car? Do we want a used car?" And all of a sudden, everything is like, oh my gosh, there's a frenzy of buying activity.
I saw, did you see this? And I don't want to just pump up other brands, but I'm legit excited about this new company. Have you seen Slate Auto? They did a big PR last week. They're like
Is that the new truck?
and
No.
like $20,000.
Yeah, I love that. It's so cool.
Yeah, I'm like, I told Susie, I'm like, get somebody from Slate on the show. She's like nodding, like I know, but you've said this 3 times, but I think they're manufacturing in Indiana. They've got plastic panels on the truck,
Yeah.
and so like they're doing a lot. And I'm like, man, that thing would be. I don't have an EV, but I would love it for just like around town stuff. We live in like we're in Nashville. It's pretty urban here. I don't get out much. I mean, maybe 12-mile radius for my life, and that would be perfect for me, so
Again, I think it kinda comes back to, like, really listening to the customer and figuring out, like, here's what we know to be true, what needs to be possible to achieve that goal,
yeah.
right? And then yeah.
And people are really frustrated with auto right now. It's crazy. I mean, I'm looking at, we mentioned we're growing our family, and I was looking at Tahoes, and I'm like, $75,000 for a Chevy truck? Like, no, thank you. This is insane, so
I know.
hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you all were well positioned. I'm excited to hear you're working with domestic customers. It seems that there's gonna be more focus on the domestic production, and I think 3PL is huge. 3PL's always been huge, and it's such a wacky industry too, where it's just like like totally fractured workplace. Like people are renting trucks, people are aggregating these things, and I just think if you have something that's like last mile that can handle the packing in a highly variable setting, 3PL could be a good use case for y'all. But like yeah, American trucking is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. And I would love to I think, we're not quite there yet, but as we think about building this robot and deploying them at fleet-like scale too, I have this vision of, working in partnership with human labor companies. There's a lot of temp labor companies that staff these organizations. I would love to see a world in the not too distant future where these temporary staffing agencies, you can go there and they can be like, look, I've got these amazing humans and I have these amazing robots. And maybe you need six of each, and maybe you only need them for 2 months for your surge period. And that would be awesome. Like, it would be awesome if the robots were available. It would also be awesome if the robots were easy enough to deploy and reliable enough that the customer would, be able to say yes. And then that temp agency maybe has a sort of, I don't know, master robot tamer, that comes out with the robots, deploys them, and maintains them for the customer for that duration of time. Like, that sort of flexibility could be really awesome. And I think that keeps the cost low for the customer because often you can offset seasonality when you span different industries, right? There's like retail, of course, is heavy, in the third and fourth quarter. And then you've got, food and beverage that often is surging in the summertime because kids are going off, there's camp and there's grilling outside and all of this other stuff. So, I think that would be great.
Well, I know, just like quick callback to Volkswagen. I mean, they were having to like staff up like 2,000 headcount like in a matter of months, and they're hiring like dozens of people in a day. It's crazy when these companies need to scale, and so it's definitely a good use for robotics. I don't know. You might want to scrub that from the air, though. I'm not sure if you want that idea getting out that Kim's trying to get into the that this is a good sales channel for robotics. You might want to keep that one a secret. I like that. That's a nice hot take. Cool. Well, we're getting close to time. Curious, what's next for you guys? What are you looking forward to? You've got this one robot being deployed. Are you,
Yeah.
yeah, what's coming up?
Well, I've got to figure out how we're going to get from, 10 robots to 1,000 robots. So manufacturing is, where are we manufacturing this? How are we manufacturing at scale is high on my list of priorities.
Where we're thinking, Mike, what are some candidates? How are you thinking about?
Yeah, so we've been having some conversations with robotics companies in Canada. We've been talking to Taiwan. We've been looking at what's available in the US. We're pretty open to lots of different options. I think it's just got to, the financials, it needs to make sense. We've got to keep it, it's simple, but it's got to stay low cost for the customer. But we also, are always thinking, of course, about quality. We need to make sure that it's going to work because we're responsible for servicing and supporting it. And we need to make sure that it's readily available. Like, I'm looking for customers that also, or suppliers, vendors that also share this big vision of, how can we, build this workforce of the future that is robotic, that complements what humans are doing. So as you were talking about VW, I think that there are so many jobs that are so important for humans. Um, I really do think like we need to be at a place where we can, the no brainer kind of jobs, pick up, put it in a box, put the robots on that stuff, and then have the
Yeah,
manage the robots.
yeah, quit.
Some manufacturing is a labor thing. Yeah, exactly. Manufacturing is a big thing right now. We're eventually we'll start sort of building, more pipeline for customers, but we have our hands a bit full at the moment. And then, we are raising money. We've got to figure out how do we manufacture these things, and then building relationships with, various companies that are building these foundation models. Um, Trying to find really the best option to support the vision that we have.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks for coming on the show. And this episode is going to be released right before the Automate conference. We'll be there. I'm gonna find you. We'll connect
I will
up.
be around.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's fantastic to see you. Congratulations on the successful pivot. And yeah, we look forward to staying in touch. So everybody check them out. The website's fantastic. Beautiful robot on the homepage at rapidrobotics.com. Can't miss it.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thanks, Tim. See you. All right, everybody. Just a quick reminder, this podcast is presented by Peridio, the ecosystem for building and maintaining advanced embedded products.